Hey guys, Jim here with another video for you. This is 50 Years in Film, 1991. But before we begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, and most importantly, leave comments. Let me know what your favorite films are from this year. Now, before we begin, we have a couple of caveats as usual. Number one, these are not all the films from 1991. These are simply the films that I own on Blu-ray. I am not including any other films that I do not own or that I own on any other physical media. Number two, this is not a countdown or any kind of ranking film whatsoever. This is just a recap of that particular year. At the end of the decade, I will do a top 10 video for each one of these years, and then we will do a ranking video for the entire decade. And number three, I have a little more housekeeping to do. I have a couple of titles that I did not mention earlier that I'm going to bring up now. And I want to give a shout out to a subscriber by the name of Fluorescent Milkshake. Very loyal subscriber. They left it in their comments, these films, and it dawned on me that I also own them and I did not include them. So I'm including them now. So Fluorescent Milkshake, keep those comments coming. Thank you so much. First one, Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. Directed by Anthony Hickox. Starring David Carradine, Bruce Campbell, and a host of others. This movie's got a great cast. Now, according to IMDb, this came out in 1989, but according to this Blu-ray, it came out in 1990. But either way, I forgot it. So I'm including it now. And this is a very fun movie. It's not a great movie, but it's fun. But Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. The other one I didn't include was Stephen King's It, the miniseries starring Tim Curry from 1990. The reason why I didn't include it originally was because, like I said, it's a TV miniseries. It's not a theatrical film. But upon reflection, I should have included it. First and foremost, because number one, Tim Curry gives one of his most iconic performances ever in this movie. But more importantly, this was the gateway for a whole generation of people that were kids and hadn't read any Stephen King novels or seen any of the movies. And they probably stumbled across this when it was premiered on TV because it was a big deal. And I'm sure it traumatized an entire generation, kind of like how 10 years earlier I saw Salem's Lot as a miniseries and it traumatized me. So that's why I'm including it on this video. So from 1990, It, the miniseries starring Tim Curry, directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. And again, thank you, Fluorescent Milkshake, for reminding me about those two films. Okay, now we're going to jump into 1991. We're going to start off with animation, and that means Walt Disney's Beauty and the Beast. This movie was a huge hit, but more importantly, it was also the first animated feature film nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It's a classic. Next. Now you're wondering, why the hell is he showing Apocalypse Now? Is he high? Well, yeah, I am, but that's not the point. I'm talking about Hearts of Darkness. Hearts of Darkness is a documentary directed by Eleanor Coppola, who is married to Francis Ford Coppola. If you don't know anything about the filming of Apocalypse Now, it damn near killed Francis Ford Coppola, financially and mentally. And this movie documents every moment of it. It's an incredible documentary. And even though that this movie was originally premiered on Showtime, it did play in the theaters because the critical acclaim was so big. Gene Siskel actually named Hearts of Darkness as the film of the year in 1991. It was his #1 rated film. If you're interested in Apocalypse Now or in filmmaking in general, you have to see Hearts of Darkness. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Now we're going to start with the comedies. And for my Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Collection, we have Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, starring Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, George Carlin, and the incredible William Sadler playing Death. This movie's a lot of fun. It's not as good as the original, in my opinion, but it is a lot of fun. And William Sadler is absolutely hysterical every moment he's on screen. The scene where they're playing for their souls, ripping off the seventh seal, is one of the funniest scenes from the 90s. The first time I saw that in the theater, I almost pissed myself. It was so funny. Yeah, I like Bogus Journey. It's a lot of fun. Next, City Slickers. Starring Billy Crystal, Daniel Stern, and Bruno Kirby, directed by Ron Underwood. It was a big hit. It's a good movie. Jack Palance won Best Supporting Actor for this movie. And probably the most famous acceptance speech ever. He actually dropped and gave a bunch of push-ups during the middle of it. I mean, and then Billy Crystal, who was hosting the Oscars, took that and ran with it for the rest of the telecast. That was without a doubt one of the most entertaining Oscar ceremonies ever. This is a comedy drama. Terry Gilliam's directed The Fisher King, starring Robin Williams, Jeff Bridges, Amanda Plummer, and in her Academy Award-winning performance as Best Supporting Actress, Mercedes Ruehl. This is a weird movie. It's a very strange movie. The first time I saw it, I wasn't really sure what I thought about it, but upon repeated viewings, yeah, I really like this movie, and it contains one of Robin Williams' best performances, in my opinion. Then we have an action comedy, The Hard Way, directed by James Badham, starring Michael J. Fox, James Woods, and Stephen Lang. I covered this on one of my installments of 5 films to check out. There's the synopsis there. This movie's a lot of fun. It's not going to win any awards. It's a lot of fun. Then we have one of my guilty pleasures, Hudson Hawk, starring Bruce Willis. I have no idea why I like this movie. Most people do not. They think it's like one of the worst movies ever made. But for some reason, this movie has always just tickled me, and I don't know why, but I do. I have a certain affection for Hudson Hawk that will always be there. But my favorite comedy that year is Defending Your Life. Written and directed by Albert Brooks, and starring Albert Brooks, Meryl Streep, Lee Grant, and Rip Torn. And Rip Torn is absolutely hysterical in this movie. This movie's got a great concept about what happens when you die. And if you've never seen it, I don't want to go into it. You have to see it for yourself. But there is a joke. Unfortunately, it hasn't aged well because a lot of the younger generation won't get it. But certain people my age and older would definitely get it. Where they go into amphitheater, a past life amphitheater, where you go in and it's like a virtual reality type thing where you see all your past lives. And the hologram that comes up at the beginning of it is Shirley MacLaine in a cameo. And it's one of the funniest things ever, because Shirley MacLaine back then, in addition to being an Academy Award-winning actress, was known for her big theories about past lives. Defending Your Life's a great movie. Now we're moving into the dramas. Rush, starring Jason Patric, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Sam Elliott. This I also included on one of my editions of 5 films to check out. I love this movie. I think it's one of the most depressing police dramas ever, but my God, Jason Patric gives what I feel is his career best performance. I love Rush. Check it out. Now we're starting to move into the action. And we're going to start off with FX2, starring Brian Brown and Brian Dennehy. I included FX on an installment of 5 films to check out. I will not include FX2 because, quite frankly, I don't like this movie at all. It was directed by Richard Franklin, who also directed Psycho 2 and Road Games, 2 films I absolutely love. This is not his best movie by a long stretch. I don't like this movie at all. Now we're coming into the cheese section of our action movies, and we've got 4 in a row, starting with Mobsters, starring Christian Slater, Patrick Dempsey, Richard Grieco, and Costas Mandylor, in addition to F. Murray Abraham and Anthony Quinn. These are the young versions of Lucky Luciano, Bugsy Siegel, Frank Costello, and Meyer. And it's a cheesy movie. It's not particularly a good movie, but it is entertaining. Moving right along in the cheese, Stone Cold with Brian Bosworth. This is a ridiculously cheesy movie, but I love it, with Lance Henriksen and William Forsythe's performances in particular. This movie is a lot of fun. Keeping that cheese container rolling, we've got The Last Boy Scout, starring Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans, written by Shane Black and directed by the late, great Tony Scott. Again, I absolutely love this movie, but it's absolutely ridiculous. But my favorite action movie that year, straight action, that is Point Break. Directed by Catherine Bigelow, starring Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves, and come on, say it with me, Crazy Gary Busey. I love this movie. It's absolutely ridiculous. I loved years later watching Hot Fuzz when they did the little rip on this. I thought that was brilliant. Yeah, I love Point Break. It's a great movie. Now we're going into the sci-fi. And we're starting with Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Nicholas Meyer, who wrote and directed Wrath of Khan and wrote Voyage Home, returned to the series to write and direct this film. And it was supposed to be the final Star Trek film. And it was, with the original cast, although Shatner and a couple of the others came back for Generations, which is the next one in the series with the new generation crew. It's a great way to end the original run of Star Trek movies. It finishes strong. And it's really funny to me that 3 of the main Klingons in this movie are played by David Warner, Christopher Plummer, and Kurtwood Smith. That casting alone, it's great. I really enjoyed Undiscovered Country. But the truly iconic sci-fi film from that year, and I will call it sci-fi, although action would certainly be apropos as well. James Cameron's classic Terminator 2, Judgment Day, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Robert Patrick, and introducing Eddie Furlong. I'll never forget seeing Terminator 2. My jaw was on the floor. The effects still hold up. The story still holds up. It's a classic. It's one of the greatest movies from the 90s. It might be one of the greatest movies ever made. Now we're going into the horror. We're going to start off with a couple of sequels. First, Chucky's back. Child's Play 3. They got a new kid to play Andy this time because he's older and the kid would have been too young for this movie. They're in a military school, and quite honestly, I don't like this movie. Next, Brian Usna's Bride of the Reanimator. The sequel to Stuart Gordon's classic, of course. I like this movie. I don't love it, but I do really like it. And here's a quick story for you. Anytime you think that, humanity is just, people are just whatever. About 5 or 6 years ago, I bought this on eBay. And it was used, or actually it was new, but it was damaged, as you can see. But it was also out of print. And I got this, my winning bid was for about $50 when it came with shipping and everything else. Literally the next day, before I could make the payment to the guy, something happened to my bank and my bank account got froze for 2 weeks. So I messaged the guy right away and told him that I couldn't pay and go ahead and relist it, and sorry about the inconvenience, the whole 9 yards. The guy sent this to me for free, told me not to pay him, said to consider it a gift because with the damage, he didn't feel it was worth relisting. This thing's out of print, and I could sell this right now on eBay, probably for about anywhere from $50 to $100. But the guy sent it to me for absolutely nothing. The world needs more people like that. Next, Warlock. This is from the Warlock collection, directed by Steve Miner, starring the wonderful late Julian Sands, Richard E. Grant, and Laurie Singer. Is it Laurie Singer? I'm sorry. Sometimes I get those two. It's not Laurie Singer. I'm sorry. I forget her name. I like this movie. I like it a lot. I don't like the sequels. Next, Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs, starring Everett McGill, Wendy Robbie, Ving Rhames, and Brandon Adams. I went to a Fangoria horror movie convention in 1991 when they were promoting this movie. And I got to meet Everett McGill and Wendy Robbie in a meet and greet. Only got to talk to them for a couple of minutes, but they were both wonderful, wonderful people. And I love this movie. Even if I never would have met them, I still would have thought that this was a really, really cool movie. It's batshit crazy, but it's a lot of fun. But I saved this one for last, and you know what it is. The Silence of the Lambs. This is one of the few movies that actually won the 5 big Oscars that year. Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Picture. And this was the only horror film that has ever won Best Picture. Now, you can debate whether or not The Silence of the Lambs is a horror film. I consider it a horror film. But what you can't debate is the greatness of this film. Whether or not you like it, whether or not you agree with the politics involved, whether or not there's things in this movie that completely turn you off, you cannot deny the quality in The Silence of the Lambs. From the direction, the script, the acting, everything. This movie's a masterpiece. Silence of the Lambs is one of the greatest movies from the 90s. And that's how we're going to end 1991. Before we wrap this up, I do want to include one other video that I am not including on this because it hasn't come in yet, and that's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I also want to give another quick thank you to Fluorescent Milkshake. Please keep those comments coming. I really appreciate the dialogue we've been having. And that goes for the rest of you as well. There's so many of you. I will be giving more shout outs in the future to some of my super subscribers, as I call them. But I can't thank you all enough for watching this. And if you like it, please give me a thumbs up, possible subscribe, and most importantly, leave those comments. I do read and respond to every one. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. I'm taking a couple of days off. My grandson's coming back this weekend. So my little recording studio will be occupied with an 11-year-old playing Roblox. Until then, have a great one.